The Memphis Grizzlies defeated the Charlotte Hornets easily on Tuesday night, but they lost an important player in the process. What does that mean for the Grizzlies now? What does that mean for the playoffs? We got to talk about all that coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I'm your host today, Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. Thank you guys for tuning in with me on today. I know I haven't been here for the last couple shows. Shout out to my co-host, Joe Monax, holding it down while I was out. But happy to be back with you guys on today as we got a lot to discuss with the Grizzlies. But before we discuss all that, make sure you remember that your favorite podcast now has a newsletter introducing the Locked On Grizzlies daily newsletter, the one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right into your inbox. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. That's lockedondaily.com and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Grizzlies newsletter. Well, it was a win, right? The Grizzlies end up beating the Charlotte Hornets 124-100. They continue to win in ways. We talked about how the Grizzlies have looked under Thomas Isolo. You see in the first three games they lost. Now they've won 3 consecutive games. You're starting to see some shifts, right? 124-100. Again, this was the Hornets, so we don't want to take too much from it, right? This is not a good basketball team, and it's a team that was, quite frankly, missing the players that are the good basketball players, so to speak. Well, Joe Monax doesn't think that LaMelo Ball is a good basketball player, but, no Brandon Miller, no LaMelo Ball. They didn't have my UT guy, Grant Williams. He was out as well. So missing a lot of familiar faces overall with the Charlotte team. But the Grizzlies, they were healthier, they were better, and they took care of business. A wire-to-wire win. Now the Grizzlies this season, 2-0 against the Charlotte Hornets, didn't trail for a minute in either game. 2 games, 2 wire-to-wire wins. And we got a lot to talk about in the game. Number one thing I want to talk about is Ja Morant, the way he played in this game, and he shined. Ja Morant was really good in this game. Ja Morant had 28 points overall, 10 of 21 shooting from the field, knocked down 4 3-pointers. No gun motions, no gun gestures in this game. Pulled out a new celebration. Looked like he was mimicking, a hand grenade celebration. So, that's his new one. We'll see. I saw some people writing about it and whatnot. So we'll see what comes of that. But anyways, 28 points, 8 assists for Ja Morant in this one. He played really good basketball. And not only that, this is now a sustained stretch where we talked about, in March, the corner was starting to turn for Ja. And now with Isolo playing other guys like Zach Edey, who played over 30 minutes in this game. We're going to talk about Zach Edey a lot more later in the show. I know there are some things that I could say about him right now, but I want you guys to know, trust me, we're going to talk a lot about Zach Edey. I just want to save that for its own segment for how good he's been putting up some historical numbers in recent games. But we'll get more into Zach Edey. Right now, we're just talking about Ja Morant. Like he's using the screens well. His 3-point shot just looks more confident. There was a stretch earlier this season where it just felt like anytime he shot a 3, it wasn't going to go in. And, there have been the shoulder problems. There's been the hamstring, all these different injuries. One thing Ja Morant has constantly said in different wording, but he said that he wants to be as healthy as possible come the postseason. And this is essentially the postseason for the Grizzlies. They're on 3 games left, and these games are against teams that if the Grizzlies lose, they'll drop like below these teams. And if they win, they could potentially surpass these teams in the standings. You talk about a Timberwolves team that's a 1 game behind the Grizzlies right now. Talk about a Nuggets team where the winner of that game between the Grizzlies and Nuggets will get the season tiebreaker. So some really important games left of these 3 games. Even the Dallas Mavericks, they still got things to play for. We'll see how it goes with their positioning with the Kings and whatnot. But at this point, it feels like all 3 of those games could be really important contests for the Grizzlies. So when you look at it like that, it's playoff time right now. Like, this is playoff time for the Grizzlies. And with this kind of being playoff time, you're starting to see the rotations reflect that. We've talked about it in recent episodes. One thing that stood out from Isolo is they're starting to play 8 guys for the most part. And one thing that I wanted to see was that the fact that Vince Williams, now that he's back, after missing a couple games with the illness, Vince Williams Jr. was back. What does that mean for other guys in the rotation? Quite frankly, who was going to see a minutes reduction? And it ended up being Luke Kennard. Like, if you look at the final stat sheet, I think Luke Kennard and Vince Williams end up playing around the same amount of minutes. Vince Williams played 16 minutes, 44 seconds. Luke Kennard played 16 minutes and 6 seconds. But that doesn't really tell, the full story, I think, so to speak. Because if you go pretty much to earlier in the game, we saw Vince Williams and Luke Kennard kind of having similar rotations coming in at the same time. But Vince Williams played more in the first quarter. I think Luke played more in the second. So their minutes are kind of split. But because of the Jaylen Wells injury, which we'll talk a lot more about in the second segment, I foresee Vince Williams being a guy who's going to have to play a lot more going forward. So Luke Kennard seems to be a guy who's losing some minutes. We talked about when the Grizzlies were playing 8 guys. It was 8 guys strictly playing 20-plus minutes, all 8. And now with Vince Williams being back in the picture, we saw in this case there were him and Luke Kennard split a lot of those minutes, which essentially told me they're still figuring out who's going to get the edge in terms of, that 9th guy. That 8th guy. It seems like they're going 9 right now, but there is reason to believe, again, the Jaylen Wells injury, it's eventually going to shift back to 8. It was a solid game for Desmond Bane as well. Just solid showing all around for the Grizzlies. Nothing too, spectacular, right? Ja Morant has continued, to be just a stat machine, as of late. Jaren Jackson Jr. didn't have his greatest scoring night, but you didn't really need it. The Grizzlies did a great job defensively. Again, this isn't a Charlotte team that had the most offensive weapons in the world. So, I'm not really taking too much from that, but the Grizzlies did what they had to do. They didn't play with their food. They took care of business on both ends of the floor, and they were productive, right? They were overall, it was so many players up and down the stat sheet getting involved. Scottie Pippen Jr. off the bench gave you 10 points. Santi Aldama off the bench made 3 3-pointers, 11 points. We talked about Desmond Bane's 19. Zach Edey, we're going to talk about him more in the next segment, in a couple segments, but 3 steals, 17 points, 19 rebounds. Jaren Jackson Jr. gave you a couple steals to go with his 14 and 5. So they're filling the stat sheet up. And that is something that's encouraging as you talk about getting closer to the playoffs, needing to see these guys gel. This Grizzlies team, even if you just look at the eye test, look, these next games are going to be real good tests. So I'm not going to kind of like over-exaggerate it here, but they just look better. They look better than they did before the coaching change. Now, towards the end of that time, before the coaching change, the reason they look bad, that led to the coaching change. But they look better. The hustle, the energy, the effort, you can tell that they're playing for something right now. And it didn't look like this team was playing for something when we saw them in early March after the All-Star break. So encouraging results from the Grizzlies. Zach Edey, Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, so many different players factored into this game. Really encouraged by Vince Williams' performance too. Going to be interesting to see how he kind of continues to progress now that his role is potentially going to be bigger. His role is going to be bigger in large part because of an injury to Jaylen Wells. It wasn't pretty. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but we're going to talk about it here coming up on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we talk about the injury to Jaylen Wells, today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Betterhelp. Look, taking care of your mental health is just as important as taking care of your physical health. Everybody doesn't know that. Taking care of your mental health is just as important as taking care of your physical health. But traditional in-person therapy can be expensive. And sometimes it ranges from $100 to maybe even $250 a session. But that's where BetterHelp comes in. With online therapy, you can get quality care at a price that makes sense. So it's going to save you some time and it's going to save you some money, because therapy isn't just for the life's toughest moment. It's not when you just got to get some tough things, obviously. It can also help you with the everyday stress. Some people got to learn how to set boundaries. Maybe you got to learn how to develop positive coping skills. Having access to support when you need it always can make a difference. And guess what? Your well-being is worth it. So visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnba today to get 10% off of your first month. Again, that's betterhelp.com/lockedonnba, and you'll get 10% off right now. So go take advantage of that great opportunity over at BetterHelp. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, and we got to talk Jaylen Wells. It wasn't pretty, and I know a lot of people have strong opinions on the play and how it played out, but Jaylen Wells transition scoring opportunity, goes up for a two-handed dunk, throws down the dunk, and gets undercut from behind. Charlotte Hornets guard KJ Simpson undercuts him. Ends up being called a flagrant 2 foul, but Jaylen falls really hard to the ground, kind of falls on his shoulder and head area, and he lied on the ground for a while. Play was paused for 24 minutes because a stretcher had to be brought out to the floor. Shout out to the EMTs at the Spectrum Center for their fast, quality, and swift work. In that moment, the Grizzlies medical staff and Hornets medical staff were all working really fast in the situation, but there's a lot to kind of digest when you're playing a basketball game and that happens, and then you have to return to action right after that. But the first thing I want to talk about before we kind of look at the Jaylen Wells side of this was when you watched it, one of the first things that stood out to me was KJ Simpson's reaction, the Charlotte Hornets guard who undercut Jaylen Wells. And, everyone's going to have strong opinions sometimes when this stuff happens. And I think if you watch the play, it was kind of clear to me that it wasn't intentional. It wasn't a smart play on his end, like going under a guy the way he did, but it was not intentional. And you started to see, that regret as soon as Jaylen Wells hit the ground. So this is, I'm sure it's tough for him too. I mean, he after he was given a flagrant 2, he had a towel wrapped around his head as he left the floor. He was the first player when Jaylen Wells failed to try to go over to him and check on him. Obviously, Jaylen Wells wasn't getting up in that exact moment. So it's a tough situation for him as well. But now, with all that being said, the early outlook is it's a broken right wrist for Jaylen Wells. His father told me that night of the game, basically said that he was having, some pain in his jaw. He was having some pain, wrist. He was having pain. There was a possible potential concussion. He fell hard, and a lot of his body was impacted by the fall. So the what we know now is, according to his agent, told me yesterday that it's a broken right wrist for him. If you know anything about a broken right wrist, look, I haven't got an official timeline. I'm sure the Grizzlies will issue one later on today, but I wouldn't expect Jaylen Wells to return this season, barring something unforeseen. So it's a big loss. It's a big loss for the Grizzlies. Jaylen Wells has been durable all season long. You talk about the only player on the team who's played in all 79 games. The Grizzlies have played 79 games this season. Jaylen Wells has been active for 79 games. He was a second-round pick. This Grizzlies team drafted him. And, Zach Kleiman's words, not mine. Paraphrasing here a little bit, but, the plan was going to bring him along a little bit, maybe spend some time in the G League and work his way, into the Grizzlies, organization, right? But he came, got a role. Vince Williams got hurt. Gigi Jackson got hurt. Neither player was available at the beginning of the season. The Grizzlies needed wings to step up, and Jaylen Wells saw an opportunity and took it. And he took it, and he ran with it. And then the Grizzlies traded Marcus Smart because they trusted what they had in Jaylen Wells and things like that. So this is a big piece for this team. This is a huge piece. We talked about that. It's a broken wrist, and it's not just, it's his right wrist. This is his shooting hand. So This is going to be a tough injury. But the Grizzlies now are in a position where they have to think about what's next because you don't have a lot of time. We mentioned Vince Williams. Vince Williams is going to be an important player. We've always said that. Me and Joe Monax, if you listen to the show, shout out to the everydayers out there. We've said it for months. This team is going to be peaking at this time of the year. Vince Williams is going to be playing a lot. Well, guess what? Doesn't really have a choice now. They need Vince Williams to be good. And they don't have the time to wait. Maybe, his knee, his ankle will be fine or whatever the case may be. They don't really have the time to wait for that anymore. They need the best version of Vince Williams. They need the pesky defender. They need that rebounder. They need that solid three-point shot that he's shown over the course of his career. They need all of that right now. Vince Williams got to be the guy. Because if it's not Vince, is it Lamar Stevens? Is it John Conchar? Is it Gigi Jackson? There's no obvious answer there. Some people can make an argument for either of those three players. Some people will even say Santi Aldama. We saw it in the third quarter. The Grizzlies went to Santi Aldama as in those jumbo three-man lineups that they like to use. They put Santi at the 3, and that worked out for them. And Santi at the 3 in those lineups is also nothing new. It's something they've done in the past. So that's an option as well. But clearly, when you put Santi at the 3, you better have a quality defender at the 1 or the 2 who can guard those perimeter options, because he's not going to be the guy you're relying on to guard, the point guards and the shooting guards of the world, those quick, shifty guys. So the Jaylen Wells loss is a big loss. I think it's simple. You don't ever want to put too much on one player, but the Grizzlies just need Vince Williams to be really good now. They need him. I don't see how you win too much more without him being really good, unless one of those guys that we mentioned, John Conchar, plays out of his body, right? Knocks down a bunch of three-pointers, plays really good defense. Lamar Stevens, he's talked about how he's worked on his three-point shot. He's a guy who I like what he brings defensively. He's going to be physical. He can compete against the LeBrons and the Lucas from a physicality standpoint. So you got him as an option as well. Then you got Gigi, who's a bucket getter, and he's trying. He's proven. He's giving you that effort on the defensive end, but the stats and the numbers haven't quite shown that he's there yet. So you got options. You got options to choose from. And it'll be interesting to see which way the Grizzlies go now that Jaylen Wells is out. So prayers up for Jaylen Wells, man. Terrific young guy. He's been one of my favorite players to cover this season. Just getting to know him, it's been great. He's this quiet rookie who comes in, but whether he has a great game or whether he has a terrible game, he's always willing to talk to us, to the media, after the games, and very appreciative of that. And look, Jaylen Wells will be an all-rookie team player. He's going to be first-team all-rookie, I believe, and possibly could even made a bigger run at Rookie of the Year, depending on how these last few games would have played out for him. But terrific rookie season, second-round pick to all first-team all-rookie. You don't see that every day. And Jaylen Wells just definitely accomplished that. It's not official, but we pretty much know that's going to happen. Another player on the Grizzlies who could potentially be a first-team all-rookie member is Zach Edey. He's rolling right now. Zach Edey just had a strong game and put up one of his best performances of the season, maybe even his best. We're going to talk about that coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we get to that, today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%. Plus, you also get 4% APY on your cash and non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rates subject to change. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year. From first match, must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Goldhood membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, where we'll talk about another rookie in the last segment. It's just this Grizzlies team, right? We just talked about one rookie and how important he was. Now we're going to talk about another rookie and how important he is to the Grizzlies, and that's Zach Edey. And the number one thing we got to say is Zach Edey's peaking right now. He's peaking. This is the best basketball Zach Edey has played of the season, and you should be grateful. You should be thankful because it couldn't come at a better time. I mean, potentially as the season goes on, there will be better times to come. But as of this point, this is what you need. Because you're about to go into these games. Guess what? Next, you got Rudy Gobert. Then after that, you got Jokic. Then after that, you got Anthony Davis. This is what you need from Zach Edey. And he's giving that to the Grizzlies right now. He had a masterful quote after the game when talking to Rob Fisher of FanDuel Sports Network in his post-game interview. And Zach Edey, after he put up 17 points, 19 rebounds, and had 3 steals, now he's had at least 10 rebounds in 5 of his last 6 games, 4 consecutive games with over 10 boards. And he's making history, in the process of doing this. I mean, putting up numbers that haven't been done since Shaquille O'Neal in 1993. Check out this stat. Zach Edey is the first rookie to have 40-plus rebounds over any 20-game span since Shaq in 93. That's from Stat Mamba. So, again, that just goes to show how strong he's been performing with his rebounding. And he said it to Rob Fisher. He said rebounding is like, scoring them. It's a rhythm. You get in a rhythm. And he is clearly in a rhythm right now. And that's important for Memphis. We talked about it all season long. The one thing that you need from Zach Edey, I mean, you love to have the way he sets the screen setting and the scoring and the three-point shooting, but you need the rebounding. Jaren Jackson Jr. is not a great rebounder. The Grizzlies, other than that, like, you got guards like John Des. They can get in there and get a couple boards, but they're not winning you games on the glass. You need a big guy who's going to say, get out of my way, I got it. Zach Edey is becoming that. And he's shown this periodically over the course of the season, here and there. But what we've seen right now is a prolonged stretch of dominance on the glass, and he's done it in these last 2 games against the Pistons and again against the Hornets in emphatic ways. So Zach Edey's rebounding is coming along. Another thing that stood out to me about Zach Edey is the game is slowing down for him. It's not just with the rebounding. It's just little subtle things. Now, he did have 5 turnovers. Can't forget that. He had 5 turnovers, which is a sign that sometimes the game is too fast for him. So I'm not saying the game is just, slowed down to the level where you see guys go from that first year to second year jump and the second year to third year jump. Not quite to that effect. But you see little plays here and there. I'm going to give a couple of examples. Like there was the play where he was fighting for the basketball. He was on the offensive end. He was fighting for the basketball. He snatches the board away. He goes up with a 2-hand dunk. He was completely poised in that situation. There have been times he's like traveled, right? Took too many footsteps in situations like that. But he looked completely under control, slammed the ball. Game just feels like it's slowing down to him. There was another play which doesn't show up on the stat sheet really. But again, he saw things before they were happening. I don't remember the play-by-play of this, but I know the ball was about to go out of bounds. Zach Edey goes to get the basketball, throws it off, the Hornets defender, and it goes out of bounds off of the Hornets. And that was a situation where he had to think quick. He had to be instinctive. And he made a play. So it's just little plays like that showcase the game-to-game development from a speed standpoint that we're seeing from Zach Edey. Another thing that stood out, and this is less of Zach Edey and more of Isolo's, perspective. And that's the fact that Isolo understands how important Zach Edey is to this team. What I mean by that is, again, with Taylor Jenkins, what we saw was it was very clear. We said this when he was the coach. This is not something that's just coming up after Taylor Jenkins is gone. Me and Joe Monex used to talk about this, and we used to say he does not trust the rookies yet. When the Grizzlies would play those upper echelon teams and things like that, Zach Edey would have a short leash. There were games we saw Zach Edey and Jaylen Wells get pulled in the third quarter and not get back in. But now what you're seeing specifically is, in this case, what we saw was you had two guys, Jaylen Wells and Zach Edey, who've kind of grown into bigger roles under Isolo. And you've had a situation, particularly with Zach Edey, who we're focusing on here, over 30 minutes twice now. He had over 30 minutes against the Hornets. He had over 30 minutes on April 1st. 2 games in the month of April, he's had over 30 minutes. Want to guess how many times he played 30 minutes on Taylor Jenkins? 0. Didn't happen. Not one time. And he had some good games, but never touched 30 minutes. Isolo's basically saying, look, we need this guy to be good for us to win. When he had that good game earlier this month, Isolo said, this has to be the standard now. And Zach Edey has responded to that challenge. It has pretty much been the standard. You take out that Boston game, which is the one exception in his last 6 games to getting double-digit rebounds because, he put Porzingis at center. They play that 5-out system, and it wasn't really a good fit for him. But you take that game out of the equation, he's been masterful. This is exactly what the Grizzlies envisioned when they drafted him. This is exactly what the Grizzlies will need because you got Rudy Gobert coming in. He's had some big games against the Grizzlies. You got Jokic coming in. He's had some huge games against the Grizzlies. A lot of big-time performances and a lot of big-time centers. Anthony Davis, that was self-explanatory. Big performances against the Grizzlies as well. These games are going to be big for Zach Edey. They're going to be big for the Grizzlies. And the Grizzlies are going to need the best version of Zach Edey to help them win those games. Look, the Grizzlies are ready for playoff basketball, and Locked On Grizzlies has you covered every step of the way. Subscribe to the Locked On Grizzlies podcast newsletter for expert analysis, insider insights, and all the playoff action delivered straight in your inbox for free. Now, look, we got something new for you because as a subscriber, all Locked On Grizzlies subscribers to the Locked On Grizzlies podcast newsletter, you will be entered to win one of these 3 amazing prizes: a $2,500 Best Buy gift card to upgrade your sports cave setup possibly, a $300 Gametime gift card, and a $200 Fanatics gift card. It's easy and free to enter. All you got to do is subscribe between April 7th and April 30th to be automatically entered to win. So don't miss a moment of their championship run. Join the Locked On Grizzlies newsletter today and experience the playoffs like never before. Make sure you go take advantage of that. Thank you guys for tuning in with me on Locked On Grizzlies today. We'll be back tomorrow. Me and Joe Mullins, we got a lot to talk about. We'll get another update on Jaylen Wells, which is pretty much going to be a formality at this standpoint. But we'll get more updates and just get more indications on what the recovery process will be like for him, as well as all other things going on with the Grizzlies. So make sure you stay tuned for that in our next episode of Locked On Grizzlies, where me and Joe Mullinax will be back together. And until then, remember that Locked On Grizzlies is free and available wherever you get your podcast. I'm Damichael Cole, and we'll see you on Locked On Grizzlies.